Deep in the northern part of Montana, where the land rises into wild hills and thick forests, there stood a cabin made of old pine wood. It was tucked between tall trees, half hidden by snow most of the year. Smoke curled from its chimney every morning, the only sign that someone lived there. The man who lived inside was named Colt Harlow. He was not like most men. He stood over 6.5 feet tall with broad shoulders and hands as big as frying pans. His voice was low, like thunder far away, and he did not talk much. People who knew of him said he was quiet, strong, and kind in his own way. Colt had not always lived in the woods. Once, he had traveled across the country, working on ships, in sawmills, and even on oil rigs. He had seen many places and met many people, but none of it had made him feel at peace. So he came to this quiet corner of Montana, bought a small piece of land, and built the cabin with his own hands. He cut firewood, fished in the cold streams, and walked the trails alone. He liked the silence. It gave him time to think and to breathe. The forest around him was old and full of life. Deer moved through the trees like shadows. Eagles circled high above. The wind sang through the pines, and in the winter, the world turned white and still. Colt liked it that way. He didn't need much, just food, warmth, and space. He didn't want trouble, and he stayed away from people who caused it. But one morning, just after the first snow of the season, things changed. The sun rose slow and golden, painting the snow in soft light. Colt was outside, chopping wood near his porch. Each swing of his axe was strong and steady. The logs split clean and fell to the ground. He wore a thick flannel shirt, heavy boots, and a wool hat pulled low over his ears. His breath rose in little clouds as he worked. Then he heard something, soft footsteps in the snow. Not the light step of a deer, nor the crunch of a raccoon. These were small, careful steps. He paused, axe in hand, and looked toward the tree line. 3 children stood there, just at the edge of the forest. They were very small, no older than 8 or 9. 2 boys and a girl. They wore old coats that looked too big, and their boots were worn and covered in snow. Their faces were round and serious, their dark eyes watching him with a mix of fear and hope. Colt slowly set the axe down. He did not scare easily, but seeing children out here, so far from any town, made him uneasy. The nearest homes were miles away, on the Blackfoot Reservation. This was wild land, not safe for kids to wander. He took a slow step forward, hands open at his sides to show he meant no harm. "Hey there," he said, his voice low but gentle. "You all right? Where are your folks?" The children did not answer, at first. They huddled together, whispering. Then the girl stepped forward. She had long black hair tied with a red ribbon and a small scar above her eyebrow. "Are you Colt Harlow?" she asked. He nodded. "That's me." She looked at her brothers, then back at him. "We came to ask for help." Colt frowned. "Help with what?" "Our creek," she said. "It's sick. The water is black. The fish are dead. The elders say it's not natural. They say someone is hurting it." Colt felt a knot form in his stomach. He knew that creek. It ran behind the reservation, feeding into a larger river that wound through the mountains. He had fished there once, long ago. The water had been clear and cold, full of trout and frogs. "Why come to me?" he asked. "Because you're big," said the younger boy, stepping forward, "and strong. And you live here. You know the woods," this third child, the older brother, added. "We saw your smoke. We've seen you walking. You're not like the others. You don't shout. You don't scare animals. You just live." Colt was surprised. He didn't think anyone noticed him, let alone watched him. He knelt down so he was closer to their height. "What's your name?" he asked the girl. "Lila," she said. "I'm Colt. And these two?" "This is Jesse," she said, pointing to the older boy. "And this is Tommy." Tommy gave a small wave. Colt looked at each of them. Their faces were pale from the cold, but their eyes were bright and serious. They weren't lying. They were scared. "All right," he said. "If the water's bad, we should see it. Take me there." Lila nodded. "Follow us." They turned and started walking back into the trees. Colt grabbed his coat, a canteen of water, and a small knife before following. He locked his cabin door and stepped into the snow. The trail was narrow and covered in fresh powder. The children moved quickly, knowing every turn. Colt had to slow his long strides to keep from passing them. They walked in silence for a while, the only sound being the soft crunch of snow underfoot and the distant call of a raven. As they went deeper into the woods, Colt noticed things. The trees were older here. Some had carvings on their bark, small symbols like animals or stars. Lila saw him looking. "Our grandpa says the trees remember," she said. "They hold the stories." Colt nodded. He could believe that. After about half an hour, they reached a small hill. Lila stopped and pointed down. "There," she said. Below them was the creek. Colt's heart sank. The water was not clear. It was dark, almost black in places, with a shiny film floating on top. Clumps of foam gathered near the banks. Along the edges, fish lay on their sides, white bellies up, mouths open. A few birds stood nearby, but they did not peck at the fish. They looked sick, too. The smell hit him next, sharp and chemical, like paint or oil. It burned his nose. "When did this start?" he asked. 2 weeks ago," said Jessie. "First the water got cloudy, then the fish stopped swimming. Now nothing lives here." Colt stepped down to the bank. He knelt and dipped his fingers in the water. It felt thick, slimy. He pulled his hand out and looked at it. A dark stain clung to his skin. "This ain't rainwater," he muttered. "We told the elders," Lila said. "They called the office in town, but no one came. Then, last night, we saw a truck." Colt looked up. "A truck?" "Yes," said Tommy. "Big and green. It came up the old logging road. It stopped near the top of the hill and poured something into a pipe. We saw it." "Did you tell anyone?" Colt asked. "We told our parents," Jessie said. "But they said it might be dangerous to speak. The company that owns the trucks pays some people. If we cause trouble, they might take our land." Colt's jaw tightened. He had heard stories like this before. Big companies cutting corners, dumping waste where no one would see. They thought no one cared. They thought the land was empty, but it wasn't empty. People lived here. Children played here. Animals drank from these waters, and now someone was poisoning it. Colt stood up slowly. He looked at the 3 small faces watching him. "You did the right thing," he said. "Coming to me. Most folks would have been too scared, but you weren't." Lila looked down. "We just want the water to be clean again." Colt wiped his hand on a clean patch of snow. "I can't fix this alone, but I can help. I'll take pictures. I'll find proof, and I'll make sure someone listens. Will you?" "Go to the police?" Tommy asked. "Not yet," Colt said. "First, I need to know more. Who's driving that truck? Where are they coming from? What are they dumping? If we go too soon, they'll just stop for a while and start again later." "Can we help?" Jessie asked. Colt looked at them. They were just kids, but they were brave, and they knew these woods better than any map. "You can," he said, "but not by going near that truck again. That's too dangerous. Instead, you watch. If you see the truck, don't go close. Just remember the time, the direction it came from, and any marks on it. Then come tell me." They nodded, their faces serious. "And don't drink this water," Colt added. "Don't let your dogs or animals near it. It's not safe." Lila stepped forward. "Thank you, Colt." He smiled just a little. "Don't thank me yet. We haven't fixed anything." They started walking back, the children leading the way. Colt stayed close behind, his mind racing. He knew he couldn't ignore this. He had lived alone for so long, staying out of other people's problems. But this wasn't just someone else's problem. This was the land. This was water. This was life, and someone was killing it. As they neared his cabin, Lila turned to him. "Will, you come to the village tomorrow?" she asked. "The elders want to meet you." Colt hesitated. He didn't like crowds. He didn't like talking in front of people. But he thought of the dead fish, the black water, the children walking miles, through snow to ask for help. "Yeah," he said, "I'll come." When they reached the tree line near his cabin, the children stopped. "We'll come back tomorrow," Lila said. "Stay safe," Jesse added. Tommy just smiled and waved. Then they turned and disappeared into the trees, small, figures growing smaller in the snow. Colt stood there for a long time, watching them go. He went inside, lit the stove, and sat by the window. He pulled out his phone and looked at the photos he had taken of the creek. The water looked worse in the pictures. The truth was hard to ignore. He didn't know what would happen next. He didn't know if he could stop the dumping or make the company pay. But he knew one thing. He could not look away. And for the first time in years, Colt Harlow didn't feel alone. He had a purpose, and it started with 3 tiny children who had the courage to knock on the door of a giant in the woods. The morning sun rose over the mountains, painting the snow in soft pink and gold. Colt Harlow woke early, as he always did. He lit the stove, boiled water for coffee, and sat by the window watching the forest. His mind was full of thoughts from the day before, the black water, the dead fish, the 3 children who had walked so far just to ask for help. He sipped his coffee slowly, the warmth spreading through his chest. He knew he had to do something. He couldn't just watch while a whole creek was being poisoned. It wasn't right. And those kids, Lila, Jesse, and Tommy, they were counting on him. After breakfast, he packed a small bag. He put in his phone, a notebook, a flashlight, gloves, and a metal jar to collect water. He pulled on his heavy coat, tied his boots tight, and stepped outside. The air was sharp and cold, but he didn't mind. He liked the way it made him feel awake. He walked to his old pickup truck, a blue one with dents and rust, and started the engine. It coughed at first, then rumbled to life. He drove slowly down the narrow road, following the path the children had taken the day before. The tires crunched over snow, and the trees closed in around him. When he reached the edge of the reservation, he parked and got out. He didn't want the sound of the engine to scare anyone or warn the wrong people. He walked the rest of the way on foot, staying off the main trail, moving quietly through the trees. He reached the creek by mid-morning. The water still looked sick, dark, oily, lifeless. He knelt by the bank and carefully filled the metal jar with water from the middle of the stream. He made sure not to touch the sludge with his hands. Then he took more photos, zooming in on the foam, the dead fish, the strange pipe that ran underground near the hill. He followed the pipe with his eyes. It disappeared into the trees, heading up toward the old logging road. That was where the children said they saw the truck. Colt decided to check it out. He climbed the hill slowly, watching the ground for tire tracks. After a few minutes, he found them, deep marks in the snow made by large wheels. They led to a hidden turnoff, half covered by pine branches. He pushed the branches aside and saw a dirt path that hadn't been used in years, except recently. The tracks were fresh. He followed the path until he reached a small clearing. And there it was, a green tanker truck, parked and empty. Near it stood a metal pipe that ran down the hill. Colt walked closer. The smell was worse here, sharp and burning. He looked inside the open back of the truck. There were empty steel barrels, some with labels half scraped off. One still had writing. "Industrial solvent, do not dump." His stomach turned. This wasn't just trash. This was poison. Someone was using the old logging pipe to dump chemicals straight into the creek. He took more photos. He recorded a short video panning over the barrels, the truck, the pipe. He wrote notes in his book. Green truck, no license. Plate, barrels with red labels, dumping at night. He knew this was serious. If he went to the police now, they might not believe him. They might say he was making it up. He needed more proof. He needed to see the men who were doing this, so he decided to wait. He found a spot behind a thick pine tree where he could see the clearing but stay hidden. He sat down, pulled his coat tight, and waited. The wind blew and snow began to fall. Again. Time passed slowly. His legs got stiff and his nose turned red from the cold, but he stayed. Hours went by. Just as the sun began to set, he heard it, the low rumble of an engine. He held his breath. A green truck came down the path, moving slowly. It was the same one. The back was full of new barrels. 2 men got out. They wore work boots, thick jackets, and caps pulled low. Colt couldn't see their faces, but he watched everything they did. They rolled the barrels to the pipe. One man used a wrench to open a hatch. The other tipped a barrel, pouring dark liquid into the opening. It made a thick, gurgling sound as it flowed down. Colt held up his phone and recorded the whole thing. His hands were cold, but steady. After, they dumped 3 barrels. The men laughed, said a few words Colt couldn't hear, and drove away. As soon as the sound of the engine faded, Colt stood up. His legs ached, but his heart was pounding. He had it. He had proof. He walked back to his truck fast, his breath coming in white puffs. He drove straight home, his mind racing. He needed help. He couldn't do this alone. The next morning, he called Danny Keene. Danny was a reporter for the local paper in Great Falls. He wasn't famous, but he was honest and brave. He had written stories about bad logging, stolen land, and broken promises. Colt had read his work before. He trusted him. "Danny," Colt said when the man answered, "this is Colt Harlow. I live up near the Blackfoot land. I've got something you need to see." There was a pause. "Colt Harlow? The guy who lives in the woods?" "Yeah, I've got photos, video, proof that a company is dumping poison into a creek on native land." Danny didn't laugh. He didn't ask stupid questions. He said, "I'll be there tomorrow." Colt spent the day preparing. He copied the photos and videos onto a USB drive. He printed out his notes. He cleaned his cabin a little, not because he cared about looks, but because he wanted Danny to know he was serious. When Danny arrived the next afternoon, he was shorter than Colt, with glasses and a friendly face. He carried a notebook and a camera. "Thanks for coming," Colt said. "Thanks for calling," Danny replied. "Most people see something bad and look away. You didn't." They sat at the small wooden table, and Colt showed him everything. The photos of the creek, the video of the men dumping, the notes about the truck and the barrels. Danny's face grew serious as he watched. "This is bad," he said. "Really bad. This kind of chemical can hurt people, kids, animals. It can stay in the ground for years." "That's what I thought," Colt said. "Do you know who the company is?" "Not for sure. But the barrels have a logo. Looks like a tree with a hammer through it. I tried to find it online, but no luck." Danny took a photo of the logo. "I'll check it. I know a few people in the EPA. If this is illegal dumping, they have to act." "Will they listen?" Colt asked. "Sometimes," Danny said. "But it helps when there's proof, and when people speak up." They decided to go to the Blackfoot Tribal Council. Colt wanted the elders to know what was happening. It was their land, their water, their children. The next day, they drove to the reservation. The council met in a long wooden hall with flags on the walls and photos of past leaders. Chief Raymond, Whitefeather, sat at the head of the table, a calm man with gray hair and deep lines on his face. Colt told the story from the beginning. How the children came to him, how he saw the creek, how he followed the truck and got the proof. The elders listened in silence. When he finished, Chief Whitefeather nodded slowly. "We knew something was wrong," he said. Our people have been sick. Stomach pains. Rashes. The animals are acting strange. But without proof, the government said it was natural. They said we were imagining things. We're not, said a woman at the table. My grandson got sick after playing near the creek. Colt looked at her. I'm sorry. Chief Whitefeather turned to Danny. What happens now? I'll write the story, Danny said. I'll send the evidence to the EPA. If this company is breaking the law, they'll have to stop, and they'll have to clean it up. Will they come after us? Asked another elder. If we speak out? Maybe, Danny said. But if enough people know, they can't hide. The truth protects us. Colt stood. I'll help. I'll keep watching the road. If the truck comes, back, I'll be there. The chief looked at him for a long time. Then he smiled. You came to these woods to be alone, but you found us instead. Thank you, Colt Harlow. That night, Colt sat by his fire, thinking. He had spent years running from noise, from people, from pain. But now he felt different. He wasn't just a man in a cabin. He was part of something bigger. The next morning, he got a call from Lila. Colt? She said. We saw the truck again, last night. It came at 10. We stayed hidden like you said. Jesse wrote down the time. Colt's heart beat faster. Good job. Stay safe. I'll take care of it. He hung up and looked out the window. The forest was quiet, but he knew the fight was just beginning, and this time he wouldn't look away. The wind howled through the pines as Colt Harlow sat by the stove, his boots by the door, his coat hanging ready. It had been 3 days since Lila called to say the truck had returned. Colt had told the children not to go near the road again, but he knew they were watching from a distance, hidden in the trees like little scouts. He admired their courage, but he worried. They were just kids. This was no game. He had spent the last 2 nights camped near the old logging road, wrapped in a thick blanket, watching and waiting. The air was bitter and snow fell in soft waves, covering his boots and the brim of his hat. He brought a thermos of hot coffee and a sandwich, but he barely touched them. His eyes stayed on the path, his ears tuned to every sound. He wanted to catch the men in the act again. This time, he wanted more than photos. He wanted names, license plates, voices. On the 3rd night, just after 10, he heard it, the low growl of an engine. He sat up fast, heart pounding. Through the trees, he saw the glow of headlights. Slow and steady, the green truck rolled down the path. Same as before. Colt turned on his phone, set it to record, and held it low behind a bush. The truck stopped at the clearing. The 2 men got out. This time, Colt could see their faces in the dim light of the truck's interior. One was tall and thin, with a scar above his eyebrow. The other was shorter, with a round face and a thick beard. They didn't speak at first, just began rolling the barrels to the pipe. Colt crept closer, staying behind trees, moving like a shadow. When they opened the hatch, he caught the sound of their voices. You think anyone's watching? The tall one asked. Who'd care? The bearded man said, laughing. Indians don't own this land. Company does. We dump what we want. Still, the tall one said, guy like Harlow lives up there. Big fella. Heard he fought in the Navy. He stays out of trouble, the other said. And if he don't, we'll handle him. Colt froze. They knew his name. His hands tightened around the phone. Anger burned in his chest, but he stayed quiet. He kept recording. Every word, every move. When they finished dumping, they wiped the barrels and drove away, tires crunching over snow. As soon as they were gone, Colt stood up. His legs were stiff, his face numb from cold, but his mind was sharp. He had it. He had their voices, their faces, their threats. He drove home fast and called Danny Keene. They came back, he said. I got video. I got audio. They mentioned me. They think they own the land. Danny didn't waste time. Send me everything. I'll run the voices through a database. Maybe we can ID them. And I'll call the EPA again. This is getting serious. The next morning, Danny arrived with a woman named Renee Cole, an environmental investigator from Helena. She wore a gray coat, carried a metal case, and had a no-nonsense look in her eyes. "Colt," she said, shaking his hand. "Danny told me what you've done. This is good work." They went over the evidence together. Renee studied the video, the photos, the water sample. She took the USB drive and said she would test the chemical in the lab. "If this is industrial solvent," she said, "it's illegal to dump it here, especially near a water source. This could be a federal crime." "Will they stop it?" Colt asked. "They have to," she said. "Once we confirm the test, the EPA will send a team. And if those men come back, we'll be ready." That gave Colt some peace. But he wasn't done. That afternoon, he walked to the reservation. He found Lila, Jesse, and Tommy near the school, building a small snow fort. "Colt!" Tommy shouted, running to him. Colt smiled and ruffled his hair. "Hey, little man." Lila walked over, her eyes bright. "Did you see the truck?" "I did," he said. "And I got proof, real proof. The man and woman from the government have it now. They're going to stop them." Jesse wiped snow from his gloves. "Will they clean the water?" "They have to," Colt said. "It'll take time, but yes, the creek will be clean again." The children looked at each other, then broke into wide grins. "We told the elders," Lila said. "They said you're a friend of the people." Colt felt something warm in his chest. He wasn't used to praise. He didn't ask for it. But hearing that, friend of the people, it meant something. He stayed a while, helping them finish the snow fort. They laughed, threw snowballs, and told stories. For the first time in years, Colt didn't feel like an outsider. He felt like he belonged. But not everyone was happy. 2 days later, Colt woke to the sound of tires on gravel. He looked out the window and saw a black SUV parked near his gate. 2 men in dark coats stood by the truck, looking at his cabin. Colt stepped outside, axe in hand. "Can I help you?" he asked, voice firm. The taller man stepped forward. He wore a suit under his coat and had a cold look in his eyes. "Colt. Harlow? That's me. I'm Frank Merrill. This is Dale Crum. We represent Northern Timber Solutions. We understand you've been making claims about our operations." Colt didn't move. "I don't know who you are, but I know what you're doing. Poisoning a creek, dumping waste. It's wrong." Merrill smiled, but it didn't reach his eyes. "There's been a mistake. We follow all laws. Our trucks are inspected. Our waste is handled properly." "Then why were your men dumping barrels in the woods?" Colt asked. "Why did they say they don't care about the Indians?" Merrill's smile faded. "You've been watching our drivers?" "I've been protecting the land," Colt said, "and the people who live on it." Dale, the other man, took a step forward. "You should mind your own business, Harlow. This doesn't concern you." "It does when it's my forest," Colt said, "and it does when kids can't drink the water." Merrill pulled a card from his pocket. "If you have concerns, go through the proper channels. Don't go around spreading lies. You could get sued." Colt looked at the card, then tore it in half and let it fall in the snow. "I don't care about lawsuits. I care about truth, and I've got proof. The EPA knows. The paper knows. If you don't stop, everyone will know." The 2 men exchanged a look. Merrill's face was tight with anger. "This isn't over," he said. "No," Colt said. "It's just beginning." They got in their SUV and drove away fast, kicking up snow. Colt stood at his gate, heart beating hard. He knew he had made an enemy, but he also knew he was doing the right thing. That night, Danny called. "Colt!" The test came back. "The water has toxic levels of benzene and xylene. Both are banned from open dumping." Renee filed a formal complaint. "The EPA is sending a team tomorrow." "Good," Colt said, "and the story runs in the paper tomorrow morning. Front page." "Good," Colt said again. He hung up and looked out at the stars. He didn't know what would happen next. Maybe the company would fight. Maybe they'd try to scare him more. Maybe nothing would change. But he had done his part. The next day, the story was everywhere. Lumberjack exposes illegal dumping on native land. Photos of the Black Creek, the green truck, Colt's cabin. Quotes from the tribal chief. A call for justice. People called the paper. They emailed the EPA. Local farmers and ranchers said they'd seen similar things. The pressure grew. By the end of the week, the EPA arrived with trucks and workers. They blocked the logging road. They tested the soil. They traced the pipe and shut it down. Northern Timber Solutions denied everything, but the evidence was too strong. The 2 drivers were fired. Merrill was suspended. The company was fined over $200,000 and ordered to clean the entire area. Colt didn't celebrate. He just kept walking the trails, checking on the creek, talking to the children. One afternoon, Lila ran up to him, waving a piece of paper. "Look," she said. "The water test. It's better. The bad stuff is going away." Colt took the paper and read it. The levels were dropping. Slowly, but they were going down. He smiled. "That's good news." "You did it," she said, hugging him, around the waist. He patted her back, not used to touch, but not pulling away. "No," he thought. "We did it." And as he stood there in the quiet woods with a child's arms around him and clean wind in his face, Colt Harlow knew one thing for sure. He was no longer just a man in a cabin. He was a guardian, and he would stay.